Good afternoon, folks. It's Cliff Purvis here with this week's Veterans View, as always, being broadcasted from the Radio Shack, sitting just off the Dark Desert Highway over in the Lothians. And once more, thanks to Caledon Radio for pushing this out on various media platforms. Well, it's been one heck of a week, folks, hasn't it, really? I was struggling to begin with this week to try and keep some things topical. And then, of course, the great dictator that is Putin launched his illegal invasion of the Ukraine. Now, let's get this sorted out straight away. There is absolutely nothing legal about what Putin is doing. He has invaded a sovereign country for his own reasons, and the excuses that he has used about genocide being used, about chemical weapons being used, about the Ukrainian government being nothing more than Nazis, is nothing more than excuses taken directly from the playbook of any dictator anywhere in the world. Putin is nothing more or nothing less than a nasty, horrible character. Right? He has been in power. He's been heading up Russia. And all this week, I'm struggling to say Russia because I want to slip back to the old terminology of the Soviet Union. But they're not the Soviet Union. It is Russia. Right? Supposedly democratic. It's not democratic at all. Putin has made sure of that. He has been in power since 1999. He has absolutely trashed the Russian constitution to ensure that he stays in power. Now, he's obviously wanting to be in power for life. He reckons, he has it on record as saying that Stalin was a good, strong man and he was a man of the times and he was, what he did was needed to be done. And this was said about Stalin. So that gives you an idea about the character that is Putin. He is nothing more than a nasty, horrible person. So how do we go about solving this problem? How does the world solve a problem like Putin? Well, they are obviously getting the sanctions now, so they're going to start disrupting the cash flow that goes into Putin. But ultimately, I'm afraid the change in Russia will have to come from the Russians themselves. And at no stage am I saying this is a Russian thing, that this is the nasty Russians doing this to the Ukraine. It's not. It's Putin and his henchmen that are done this. And we often wonder, sitting in the luxury of the democracy that we sit in, how people can get blindsided by such dictators as Putin is. Yeah. How can they get blindsided? Well, we just look towards the Russians. They control of the media that Putin and his henchmen have is ultimate. So they will be told exactly what the leadership needs them to know, and that is how easy it is to con a country. There was some incredibly brave people, well, I consider them brave people, on the streets of, I believe it was St. Petersburg, it might have been Moscow, protesting about what Putin is doing. Now, in that country, to do that thing, that takes an awful lot of bottle. And we'll be talking about spirit and stuff later on. But for some Russian people to get out there and protest that what Putin is doing is wrong takes an awful lot of bottle. We think back as a yes movement to what we do, and regardless of who organises our marches, right? We get out there, we march, right? At no point are any of us thinking to ourselves, we're not going to go home tonight, right? We're going to get arrested. We are going to get thrown into a cell. We are going to be denied our human rights. We are going to be tortured. We're going to be humiliated. And if we're lucky, then we get released with a very, very stern warning not to talk about our experiences. That doesn't happen to us. When we finish a march, when we finish our rallies, yeah, we head to the nearest local, or we get on our buses, yeah, we head home and we have a good time. We continue having that good time. But these people don't have that opportunity in Russia. Right? They're so closed down that if you've watched any program about any travel program in Russia, you know, people going off the beaten track, they are, you know, if they've got a camera filming them doing this unusual journey, there is always a group of minders with them, Soviet era minders, with these camera crews, making sure that nothing untoward is getting filmed. So that's your man Putin for you. He is nothing more than a nasty, horrible dictator. Social media, unfortunately, being the platform it is, I caught one character who will remain nameless, trying to justify Putin and how he's conducted himself in Russia, and trying to justify what he's doing in Ukraine, blaming it all on the West's propaganda. I didn't respond to it at all. I didn't rise to it. I just blocked the person, and hopefully I'll never see the person or see the person's name again. We are back now to the worst days, I think, of the Cold War. One good thing I did see coming through on the midweek there was President Biden of the US when he did his speech, and he actually drew a line there. You know, okay, we can't militarily do much for the Ukraine other than supply them with equipment, but he has actually drawn the line and turned around to Putin and says, well, okay, you might end up with the Ukraine in some form or shape or manner, but the assets that are being deployed by the US and others as part of NATO will be there, and they will fight for every inch of NATO territory. So that will have put a marker down for Putin, and he will have noted that. It really, really is a torrid state of affairs going on there. Added to this thing about him now saying that he's wanting to have some form of political dialogue setting up in Belarus, sorry. He's wanting to set up a meeting in Minsk with people. But first of all, they have to comply with certain conditions. And the conditions that he has set out about getting rid of the government and stuff like that are absolute nonsense. In fact, they're very, very reminiscent of the conditions that were handed over to the government of Serbia by the Austria-Hungarian Empire back in 1914, after the Grand Duke was assassinated along with his wife in Sarajevo. A couple of weeks, I think it was a couple of weeks after the incident happened, before the ultimatum went into Belgrade. Putin is doing exactly the same thing. He has made sure that his conditions to the Ukrainian government are beyond them accepting. They will not accept that. And it really is the measure of the thug that Putin is. On that one, I think I probably need to take a break here to calm down, because it is infuriating to see this unfold. And it is, I always think, the downside to having a 24-hour news channel, because you can actually see it unfolding minute by minute. And there was some shocking video today of a Russian jet firing missiles into civilian accommodation. That was filmed, I believe, on some sort of smartphone. So it's absolutely shocking. But I think it's time now to take a pause here, play a song. I'll have a wee breather, and then we'll get back into the show. So my first song of today is by Paul McCartney and Wings, and it is "Live and Let Die." Take it away, guys. And we are into part two of the show. Right. Now, we mentioned the response, the world response to what's going on in Ukraine, caused by the illegal invasion by Putin. Now, obviously, the sanctions, as we've mentioned, they're starting to get imposed now. In my mind, they've taken a little bit long getting up and running, especially in the UK. Now, I'm well aware that the smell of the Russian oligarch money is rank on the streets of London. But honestly, what did the Conservative and Unionist Party honestly think they were doing by accepting money that's ultimately come from Putin and his clique? What did they think they were doing? Did they think this money would just appear in their bank balance and no one would turn around and say, well, who's actually donated that? And it turns out that it's the oligarch. And of course, Johnson has elevated the son of a KGB officer to the House of Lords. What a wonderful thing, because if that is not a standalone reason to be rid of the House of Lords, then I really don't know what is. Of course, we're not actually clean of the putting money up where we are, because a certain former politician, now leader of a very, very fringe party, of course, was on weekly shows on RT television, which effectively is Putin TV. So again, did Alex Salmond not think to himself, what has generated that money that I am getting? Where has that money come from? Just how dirty is that money that's now sitting in my bank account? But he has done something, which is probably better than nothing, marginally so. He has done something, and he has suspended his show. Why he hasn't actually cancelled it, I have no idea. But I'm beginning to think maybe because he has been on there and other things that have gone on with his party, I'm thinking that maybe he will not get a gig elsewhere. So why don't you do the honourable thing there, Alec? Think of Scotland instead of your bank account, and actually close down all connection with the Putin state apparatus. There's been some other things obviously happening. We've had the cancellation of the sporting events, and again, is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? My own personal view on that is yes, it is a good thing, because the less propaganda that they get coming out of Russia, positive propaganda, the better. I mean, we fell foul of that as a world when we allowed Nazi Germany to stage the Olympic Games, and we've seen. If you ever watched the footage for that, it is really, really scary how they really sort of turn it around to advertise everything nice about how Nazi Germany was. So yeah, the Champions League final is now being played in Paris, and I believe Formula One has cancelled the Russian Grand Prix. All of which I am in favour of. Yes, and we are well aware that when people start imposing sanctions on a country, it is never the leadership that suffer. It is always the man, woman, and child, in the equivalent of the council estates that end up suffering. Um, for too long, Putin has been appeased. He really has. And history has shown us if we continue to do that, if we constantly appease a dictator, then they will start to get emboldened, and they will start to try and flex their muscles in other ways. And he is most certainly trying to reconstruct the former Soviet Union and trying to incorporate all those countries. Now, fortunately for a lot of those countries, they are now members of NATO, and that line has been drawn. Now, this podcast is being broadcasted, being recorded on the 25th of February. So as I sit here recording it, very safe in the Radio Shack, knowing that no special agents are going to batter down the door and I get tasered and dragged off, because I'm allowed in this very safe democracy we live in. I am allowed to make these broadcasts. But by all accounts, the invasion force, the Russian invasion force, is not having it all its own way. By all accounts, the Ukrainian forces are making a stand where they can, and that is a level of guts, a level of bravery that I cannot imagine. I've never had to place myself in that situation. There's no earthly chance that they will stop the steamroller. There's no earthly chance they'll stop it. But by heck, they're giving it a good go. And that, I think, shows just what the Ukrainian people think of their country and what the Ukrainian people think of their government, that they are prepared to pretty much do last-ditch, no hope stands against the steamroller that is the Russian army. Yes, there's been some reports of the heavy losses on the Russian side of things, but it's a drop in the ocean to the size of force they have. So I really cannot imagine what is going through the minds of those very, very brave Ukrainians who at this moment in time are fighting for their lives, and more importantly, they are fighting for their country. They are fighting for the democratic way. And they have absolutely, when this is all done and dusted, we need to investigate. We need to figure out what the West could have done to stop this, because those brave men and women that will ultimately sacrifice their life for this, they need to get the respect that they are absolutely due. As I mentioned, I've never ever been in that situation. I was a member of the British Army, and anytime we deployed, we basically had overwhelming force. Yeah, so I never had to put myself in that situation that those boys and girls are doing tonight, and have been doing for the last 48 hours. So the next, I guess, 48 hours will be the critical timing. Just how much does Putin want to take Kiev? Because by all accounts they're digging in there, and it might turn into a street-by-street battle. And if you ask any commander at any level, the last thing they want to do is go street-to-street fighting. But of course, the Russians, they're very good at standing off and launching their free-flight missiles, the Katyusha rockets. And I've seen the devastating effect that those things can have when they're used in Bosnia. And they are pretty indiscriminate. So the next 48 hours for those poor people out there will be, I think, critical. And it's no use us sitting in our home saying, why don't we just surrender? It's not our country that's been invaded. It's Ukraine that's been invaded, and those brave people are putting up a very good fight. So on that one, I think we will break for song number 2. And this one is, where's my playlist? I'm doing a Boris Johnson. I've lost all my stuff. Here we go. It's The Walls Come Tumbling Down and it is by the Style Council. Take it away. And we are back for part three, and as always, it's winging in again. Righty, so let's move away from the Ukraine at the moment, and let's start thinking about what's happening on our own shores. Because I know we've had our attention fixed on the events in East Europe, but life is going on here in the UK, and without a shadow of doubt, Boris Johnson will be loving the attention away from him. Because let's not face it, he's still under investigation for having illegal parties. Although the questionnaire was released, I believe it was the ITV channel got picked up the questionnaire that each and every one of them were getting, and they showed it to a legal-minded type person, and apparently it's all very wishy-washy questions. And again, a lot of people are turning around saying that they cannot remember at any stage receiving a questionnaire before getting a fixed penalty fine. And I certainly didn't. More or less, I think the last fixed penalty fine I got was for speeding as a bit of a youngster on the A9 south of Inverness, heading towards Hull to catch a ferry to go back out to Germany to my unit out in Germany. Yeah, and there was, let's face it, there was only me and the unmarked police car on the A9, and I am not making any excuses for the wrong I did, but it was a fixed penalty fine I got. I didn't get a questionnaire through the post saying, was there any contributing factors or anything like that to it. Yeah, it was a fair cop. I think I was doing 80 in a 70 area. So anyway, that was a fixed penalty fine I got, but certainly no literature to fill in. So why is it that the government, the governing administration, why are they getting all this stuff? And again, it does highlight the difference between the elite of the so-called union and what happens to everybody else. Because I believe there was some parties and raves and whatever getting disrupted by the police. Did any of those people that got fixed penalty fines there, did they get a questionnaire before they received their fixed penalty fine? I do not think so. So, what else has been on the go? A couple of anti-English posts cropping up on social media that I tried to point out that what they had posted was grammatically incorrect and could be, you know, sensibly it could be taken as anti-English. But all of a sudden, the pack that is some of these people, they believe in the power of the meme instead of sensibility, and they turned around. Basically, they were saying that England has prospered from the North Sea. And I tried pointing out, well, if you think England has prospered under the Union, you may want to take a tour in Newcastle, Sunderland, Leeds, Sheffield, Liverpool, Manchester, Birmingham, Bristol, and so on, to witness just how bad things are there. In fact, the infrastructure in Northumberland, if you want to have a look at that. So no, it's not England that has prospered from the North Sea, and neither is it London, because there are some very, very rundown areas there. The only prosperity that we have seen, or the people that have prospered from the North Sea resources, is in fact the City of London. Right, that's a very small area of London, the City of London, and of course the ruling elite, be they aristocracy, lords, ladies, whatever. It is them that has retained the wealth, and they're not spreading that about. And as I've mentioned before, and will never tire in saying, if money is retained, it's not in circulation. If it's not in circulation, then it's bad for the economy. So yeah, I tend not to like these anti-English things because they will be used against us. They will absolutely be used against us. And if anybody is wanting to set up an anti-English platform and they want to do a spreadsheet on who they think is pure enough to be in an independent Scotland, you might want to start with me. If you want to set up some sort of wanna-see conference, that's where the Nazis nailed down the final solution. But if you want to do something along that line, you can start with myself, because my father was English. I'm half English, half my family are English. I have got some incredibly good friends that are English, and some of those that I have literally trusted with my life. Yeah, so let's knock this anti-English thing. Let's concentrate on who it is we are against, and that is the not the establishment, the elite down in Westminster and the City of London. Let's leave everybody else that suffered but from this chronic union to live in peace, please. What else has been on the go? It's it now does seem right as though Johnson will be here for a little bit longer than anticipated. I know I've been sort of ringing his final bell on a number of shows, but it does look as though he's going to be here a little bit longer. And that's probably because nobody actually wants to pick up the cluster that he has created. So they'll just leave him in power to basically hang on his own rope. Which it's not a bad thing that he's going to be remaining in power. I mean, we can't remove him. As a very good friend of mine once said, how do you remove a majority government mid-term? You just cannot do it. But with Johnson being in power, with him doing what he's doing, yeah, it may be a bumpy ride, for a few months. But when the spring arrives, when the weather improves, when we get into springtime, well, with the good weather comes that announcement, the announcement from Nicola on the next referendum, as she's promised to do, and that's by then we as an organisation will have an overwhelming amount of ammunition to throw at the unionists. So in the meantime, in the meantime, why don't we just kick back, right? Let's just kick our shoes back and watch as the elite of Westminster rip asunder their precious union. It does promise to be a rather good show as they actually destroy themselves. It really is a great time to be active in an independence campaign, because when this campaign kicks off and we're active and we're going door to door and all this wonderful stuff, and I know people are doing that just now, but when it's fully kicking in, I don't think that we should think we're starting from a position of 45%. We've moved on that. We've moved from the 2014 result. All right. So let's not think we are starting from a losing position. I think, we're for definite, we're through 50%, and we're heading north of that. So every time a unionist says no, if they just come out with a silly answer of a flat no, we actually get more support from that. Every time a unionist says we are too poor, we get more people supporting us. Every time a unionist says we will be shunned internationally, we get more support to our cause. Basically, every time a unionist reacts or makes a move, we actually get more support for the cause of independence. Now, the outcome is by no means certain, and we will need to apply ourselves correctly. But you know what, folks? It is absolutely achievable. What we are dreaming of, what we're attempting to do here, is not the realms of fantasy. We can really get the job done this time. Okay? Remember who we're doing it for. Yes, we're doing it certain amount of it for ourselves. But we're doing this independence thing for our kids, for their kids, and for generations as yet unborn. Let's leave them a good country to be living in. And on that one, I think we will break for song number 3 of the day, and it is Fields of Fire by Big Country. Take it away. And all too quickly, we are back into part 4 of the show, and I'm hoping you guys are still keeping entertained. Right, so this week's show was always going to be a difficult one for me, on personal reasons. Not just because of what's happening out in the Ukraine, but the time of year it is. And as I posted up on social media this week, this is actually the 31st anniversary of my one and only time of being at war, and that was the first Gulf War in 1991. I was out there as a medic. Basically, the regimental band of the Queen's Own Highlanders was tasked to do their medical assistant duties. They were one short, and I was asked as the medical corporal to go out with them to make up numbers, and I did. I'd often asked, why would you volunteer? It's just the nature of the beast. It really is the nature of the beast. And we went out fairly early on the deployment of the UK forces as medical support to the 7th Armoured Brigade. We did lots and lots of training out there. We had loads and loads of time, and very fortunately where I was working in, which was the dressing station, dressing station 1 Alpha, we very soon had the doctors. They basically stripped back all the training, and then they retrained us, and we were trained, exercised and exercised, as all elements of the brigade were at their various jobs. So by the time the ground offensive launched, which was on the 24th of February, we were ready for what may be presented to us in the way of casualties. And of course, the big thing there was that the breaches were made through the burns, the big sandbanks that the Iraqis had built up. The breaches were made, and we were going through, and it was always practiced that you didn't hang about in the breach, that you went as quickly through it as possible. And we actually drove into a traffic jam, and I jest you not, folks, it was a traffic jam that would put any motorway in the UK to shame. Things were heading north so quickly. We then set ourselves up. Half the dressing station set up, the other half remained packed, and we moved forward. And that's basically how the dressing station operated for the 4 days of the land war. Half would be packed up and moving forward with the troops. The other half would be open and receiving casualties. I have absolutely no idea how many casualties I dealt with. I cannot remember my last casualty. You never know it's going to be your last casualty, I guess. And I have a very fond memory of my first casualty, and that was a British soldier with a sprained ankle. And I won't go into detail how he managed to sprain it, but being with us was totally justified. And it was such a grounding for me, because we'd been trained up and ready to receive all sorts of casualties with the full horror of what weapons can do to people. And my first casualty of the ground conflict was a sprained ankle, which got me grounded, got me thinking straight, and then we just went into it. We were receiving casualties every night. We ended up doing the night shift basically, and every night we were receiving casualties. It was a busy 4 days. However, And I'm not glorifying war in any shape, form, or manner, and I've said this on countless occasions. Having experienced it, I'd never wish to go through it again. But I am very proud of the people I worked with. I'm very proud of what I did. And it was every casualty that got to us alive. We stabilised and we got them out to definitive care, or in some cases, especially with the Iraqis, if they were fine, if they just needed a couple of things done to them, then they'd head off down to the prisoner of war camp. Every single casualty was treated by an importance of their injury. Nothing was paid to what uniform they were wearing or what rank they were. They were treated as per what their injury indicated. So yeah, we had a busy little 4 days. So that was always going to be, or this show was always going to be a difficult one for me to get through. And like I said, I'm not glorifying war, and now sitting 31 years on, we fully realise, that conflict was about keeping the oil in the hands of people that were friendly to the West. It was absolutely nothing to do with liberating Kuwait from the hands of an oppressor, because the Kuwaiti government are equally oppressive. So it was all about the oil. That said, I will always stand by the people I work with out there. Absolutely professional, and I always tip my hat to them. And once I'm doing this, finish this, I'm now then going on to some FaceTime with some former colleagues of me, and we will chat about what went on 31 years ago. So this one was always going to be a difficult one for us. Okay, but we're through that bit there. So what is there for us to do ahead? Well, we have obviously, as I mentioned earlier, we've got the spring announcement, which will go ahead regardless of what's happening in the world. And it's important that we do that. We need to keep our focus on what we're trying to do here, folks. I know it's too easy to get sidetracked. It's too easy to think what's happening in the world is a horrible bad thing. I know it is, but we've got to focus on what we're trying to achieve here, and that is a free and independent Scotland. And what has happened this week has really highlighted just how impotent Johnson and Truss and all the other cronies in that cabinet of shame, how impotent they really are. Truss went to Moscow and tried to lay the law down and spoke over the interpreter. Now, anybody that's used an interpreter knows you speak, they speak, you speak. Yeah, that's how it works. So she obviously hasn't had much in the way of schooling of what you do with the use of interpreters. But Johnson, again, is making all these grandiose statements about this, that, and the other. He's desperately trying for his Churchill moment, and he will never get it, because the UK and the administration is not rated. Nobody in the world rates Johnson and his administration as anything other than farcical. Yeah, so Putin will be listening to what Biden is saying, and he will be looking at the combined NATO force, right? And that's what will probably rein things in. So in the meantime, then, we keep concentrating on what we're doing. We're chipping away at people. If you find someone that want to discover what this independence thing is all about, let's be honest with them. If you don't know the answer, point them in the direction of Believe in Scotland, because they've got lots and lots of answers on that site, and I know I keep pushing them, but there is a very good starter pack they have, because you can always, they have the bite-sized information, and then you can read into the information at your own leisure. So we engage with these fine people, and let's get these numbers up when we hit the streets again. Like I said, I'm totally convinced we are through that 50%. I'm convinced we're through 55%, to be brutally honest with you. So let's keep these numbers heading north, and we will have a successful outcome come the referendum in the last half of 2023, and that is definite. Cliff said it, so it's going to happen. I wish. No, I honestly believe that is when we are going to have the second referendum of Scottish independence. So on that note, what I'd like to do now is to wind up this week's show. As always, huge thank you to the admin team at Caledon Media for sorting out all the editing and getting splicing in the songs and trying to do sorting out my volume. Obviously, a huge thank you for all you guys and girls out there that are listening into this podcast. It is actually humbling to know that people are listening in, and they're listening in not just in Scotland but up and down the world. All right. So stay safe, folks. Stay positive, and obviously, we have, our future is most definitely bright because independence is right, and because it is the anniversary of that Gulf War, I would like to play out for today with the Sands of Kuwait by the Regimental Band and the pipes and drums for the Queen's Own Highlanders. Take it away, gents.